Hello, it's Abbott Austin for the 11th class in the spirituality course. First of all, you might say I rearranged my office, so the backdrop's different, and I have a bit of sun coming in here, so I apologize for that. If I had a studio, I could adjust things better. All right, so we've been talking about meeting our needs, and we want to have another class on that. So this is the second part of that topic, meeting our needs. Okay, so let me answer perhaps some misunderstandings about this topic. So if we're going to meet our needs, some might say, well, that's thinking about that's a bit of an unrealistic approach because, you're going to try to meet all your needs in this life, you can't do it. Okay, so just to be clear, I'm not saying you can. You will not meet all your needs in this life. So just to be very clear about that, I'm not saying that. Don't expect to be fully satisfied in this life because you will not. Okay, you will not. So even if you received all that this world has to offer, you will not be completely fulfilled. You will not have reached your salvation, right? So the world is not enough, as the old saying goes, right? What we've been saying is that when we need God, God is what we need most of all. And indeed, when we have God, well, we don't need anything else really. We'll be happy, okay? We'll be fully, completely happy, satisfied, saved, right? We'll have the purest and amazing joy once we attain that full union with God, but that comes in the next life. So in this life, we have to try to meet our needs the best we can with the things that we have. And it's not bad to do that. We should do that. But no, we will not meet all our needs. And what that means too is that we will experience sorrow in this life, indeed even suffering, because not having certain needs, authentic needs met, we're going to have sorrow and suffering in this life. So we have to be able to patiently deal with the sorrows of this world. Okay, I'm not denying that. That's all true and very important. Still, it's good, as I'll say in a moment, to seek our needs, to think about them. I'll say that in one moment. Let me first answer another objection that might come up to this way of speaking. And it's that talking about needs and focusing on needs, at least of being self-centered. Okay, and I'm going to say not in the way I'm talking about it. Okay, I will grant, though, there is ways in which people talk about meeting their needs that is a bit self-centered, or is rooted in kind of some superficial psychology or psychobabble, right? And there's a whole bunch of things out there about needs, hierarchy of needs, all that. You've probably studied that or heard of that. Okay, don't like throw what other people say onto what I'm saying. I'm not necessarily using their systems or, ideas here. So first of all, don't seek your needs in a self-centered way. Okay, I'm not saying that. And indeed, what I'm saying is if you really reflect on what your needs are, right? And it's one of the things I talked about in the last, at the end of the last video. Really reflect, what are your needs truly? If you do that, you'll see that you can't be self-centered and satisfy your needs because we have an authentic need within us to go beyond ourselves in friendship and communion with other people. And then most of all, to go beyond ourselves in friendship and communion with God. Right? So being self-centered works against that. We have to go outside of ourselves and ultimately outside of ourselves to participate in the very life of God. Right? So if you really understand your needs, you'll see that being self-centered will not work. So a true understanding of your needs actually prompts you to go outside yourself and not be self-centered, but indeed to look for a friendship and indeed for friendship with God. Okay, so that is worth remembering. And also, the other thing I'll say here is that, remember, I've been talking about our ultimate goal being the enjoyment of God. Okay? So, and that we're to order even our pursuit of needs of things in this world to the attainment of God. Order it all to God. Okay, so my approach here is actually God-centered. Right? We're ultimately seeking God. We're ultimately aiming for God. And that's our goal, right? To enjoy God. Okay? So this is a God-centered approach when I'm presenting, when I talk about needs. But as I said, we're not going to be able to have the full enjoyment of God in this life because we won't have full union with God in this life. So in this life, we have to meet our needs, different needs that we have, with the things in creation, the things out there, so to speak. Right? So here's a way of thinking about this. We haven't yet attained God. That's where we're moving towards in this journey. Okay? And along the way, what God does, he gives us hints of his goodness, hints of his beauty, his wonderful nature through created things that, as we said in some of the early things, these created things have goodness to them, they have perfections in them. And those perfections are like God. They fall short of God, but still they're like God. And then we can see through them an indication of who God is and his infinite majesty, right? And his preeminent goodness, his preeminent beauty, his preeminent truth and wisdom and love that God has, right? So created things, in a way, are these foretastes of the goodness of God. So we should apply that too when we're talking about meeting our needs. So when we get something that we need, and we meet a need with things in this world, see it as a foretaste of God's goodness. God is giving you in his goodness, he's giving you in his generosity, right? He's giving you these things that are satisfying in a certain sense, and yet they're not as satisfying as God, right? So think of it that way. So we're trying to meet these needs, and when we do and enjoy them, what they're doing is giving us a foretaste, a hint of God's goodness. And so if we do that, we keep moving towards the ultimate goal, which is God, who will fully satisfy all our deepest needs, right? Okay, so God, in a way, is the one necessary thing, to use that gospel saying that Jesus uses. All right, and you notice, too, if we're going to order everything towards the attainment of God, some of the things we talked about earlier in some of the earlier videos is important, right? You have to, if you're going to set your sights on God, you got to be thinking correctly of who God is. So that all that stuff we said about thinking correctly about God is important. And remember how faith helps us to think correctly about God and his plan for us. Also, to be ordered towards God and to order things towards God, you have to want God, right? You yourself have to be ordered and orientated in desire towards God, right? So what we said about charity and wanting God is important. And likewise, hope, right? Because when we want God, we're not going to be able to get the full attainment of God right away. There's going to be an obstacle of one sort or another. And so we need that virtue of hope as well. So those earlier things are very important to remember here if we're going to order our pursuit of our needs, the need for created things, to God, to the attainment of God. Okay, now why is it important to talk about needs? So I try to answer some objections to why, or to this way of speaking, that's unrealistic and that it ends up making us self-centered. Okay, so I hope I answer those objections okay, or satisfactorily. But why is it valuable to speak in this way? Because our needs are going to influence us no matter what. Inevitably, unavoidably, we are influenced by what we need. This is part of our objective nature as human beings. We have certain authentic needs in our very nature, right? In here, in that one part of reality, the in here part of it, as we talked about before. Okay, so that's part of who we are. We can't, it's not simply for us to say, I want to need this, or I want to, no, there's certain needs that are just part of who we are, part of our nature. And they're going to influence us. So we're going to be drawn to what we think will meet a need. Even if we're not clear about what we need and all that, but we're drawn towards things. And then we're also repulsed by things that we identify as being against what is needed for salvation or needed for fulfillment, right? So we can't help it. So if we understand better our needs, then we can understand better why we act in certain ways. And then we can better kind of manage our desires and direct our wants and so forth, so we can help live in a better way. And I'll say more about that. It's the bulk of this course. I'll kind of try to give some steps of how to use this kind of knowledge, this way of thinking, to improve your behavior, right? To act in a more fulfilling and holy way, ultimately. Okay, also another value of speaking this way, it has to do with balance. What we sometimes mean, the word balance can be used in different ways, but what we sometimes mean by living a balanced life. If you neglect certain needs, all right, you won't be able to live a balanced life. It's like having a balanced diet, right? There's certain nutrients that are essential, and if you neglect them, you won't have a balanced diet. Likewise, there's certain things in life that are essential. If you neglect them, you're going to have to live in a balanced way. So here, speaking, those who are watching us are interested in spiritual things. So here's a case in which this can happen. And it has happened in the history of things, in the human race and spirituality. Okay, so you realize rightly that what you need most of all is God, right? And so that makes you then realize, well, I need to find time for prayer. I need to avoid sin and to live in an upright way. Okay, but then you neglect some other things that you need, like comfort, right, or relaxation. You need that. You need to kind of, every once in a while, doesn't mean you unwind in some bad way, you go on some drinking binge or something like that. No, but you need some relaxation. I think it's even the Summa Theologiae that St. Thomas speaks about that. and the value of playing certain games in a way to kind of relax. There's also a story. I'll try to keep this quick. I don't want to babble on too much here. But there's a story, an ancient story from the sayings of the Desert Fathers, and it's said of different saints. One of the ones I've heard is this. It's said of the Apostle John, the evangelist and Apostle John. He's a holy man, well respected. And a hunter has come back from the fields. He's hunting. He has his bow and arrow with him. And he sees, and he's a Christian, and he sees this holy apostle, John. He's sitting there, he's petting a partridge. I don't know, that's maybe in the ancient world, that's what kind of pets they had, partridges. So he's just relaxing, petting a partridge. And this seems like a really superficial thing for such a holy man to be doing, right? Frivolous. So the hunter kind of, is shocked, a bit scandalized, and says to the apostle John, "What are you, such a holy and serious man, doing, petting a partridge, right?" And so the apostle John responds to the hunter and says, "Look at that bow you have in your hand. What if you were to, when you're not hunting, what do you do with that bow?" And he said, "Well, I take the string off of it and I put it, in some storage." So, and John says to the effect, "Why don't you just keep the bow taut the whole time? Why don't you keep the string taut on the bow all the time?" He says, "Well, it would wear it out. It would lose its vigor." So the Apostle John says, "Likewise, if I'm always applying myself to the strenuous kind of work of the spiritual life, I'll wear myself out. And I will lose the vigor to do those things, which are important, right? To do those spiritual practices that are important. But I'll lose the vigor if I don't every once in a while give myself the ability to relax, right? So you have a need for comfort, right? All right. Another thing too is the need for friendships, human friendships. You can pursue the spiritual life in such a way you neglect that, and that can be unhealthy emotionally and psychologically, right? So again, the point here is if you don't take stock of what you genuinely need, you can end up living in an unbalanced way, even compromising your physical and even emotional and psychological health. Okay, so this is worth doing. All right, now how does this work? I want to apply it to some of the challenges we experience in living our Christian lives and trying to live a good spiritual way of life. Okay, so here, again, recall, I've alluded to this already, but recall what I said at the end of the last video, that there's three things that we want to do here. We want to know or be aware of our needs in here, right, in ourselves, our authentic needs, so identify those. Then you want to know what it is, the things out there that will really meet those needs, be discerning about that, right? There's false counterfeits, as we said in the last video, but know what truly meets these needs. So that's the second thing. So know your needs, know what truly meets those needs, and then order your pursuit of those needs to God. Okay, those three things we're going to come back to and use. But we're going to start with this. Often, here's how it works. We're going through life and we're finding ourselves doing something bad. We're, just excessively doing something wrong. We're kind of stuck in it and we're trying to find a way out. So what we want to do then is apply those three things I just mentioned. That is, okay, why am I doing this? All right, so then look at what is the need I'm trying to meet, identify that need, the underlying need, and then you can then see what will truly meet that need and then order that to God. Let's be concrete. I'll give you this example. Suppose this guy, John, he works a full-time job, and in his free time, what he finds himself doing is spending hours playing video games. Right? He's probably playing too much time playing video games. Okay, so is it inherently wrong playing video games? No, right? But he's doing it too much. It's excessive, and it's kind of leaving him spiritually blah, and he just knows this is wrong, but he just can't help it. He kind of comes back from work, his free time, that's what he goes to, right? So in a way, it's a counterfeit activity. He's seeking to meet a need in this way, but it's not the right way. And he even has a false instinct where he automatically, when he has free time, he goes and plays video games, right? And you can do this with other things. You can watch the internet too much and all that kind of things, so forth, right? Okay, but here's the concrete example I want to use. So follow the steps, those three steps I just gave. Okay, identify the underlying need that John is trying to meet in that way. Okay, and then you can start, once you identify that need, then you can start thinking about how to truly meet it in the right way or a better way to meet it. And then order that pursuit of that need to God. All right, so what is the underlying need here for John? Well, it is a need for, it would seem, there could be multiple needs one's trying to satisfy here, but we see the need for comfort, which we talked about in the last video. particularly a need to relax, that kind of comfort. He's stressed out from work, right? And so or for whatever reason, he's stressed out. So this is how he finds relaxation, right? So he's trying to meet the need for comfort. That's an authentic need, right? So don't deny it. You really have that need. Okay, but then that's step number one, identify the underlying need. Step number two is then now think about what's the right way to meet that need, the better way, right? So what is it? It's not, spending so much time on playing video games, right? So what's the right way, right? So is there a better way of doing this? Is there, just something that will be relaxing, but won't be so engrossing or take so much time, right? And then here too, what's going on, remember too, when we have the need for comfort we're trying to meet, there's often some deeper issue going on that's creating the discomfort. There might be an unmet need, that deeper unmet need that's leading to the need for comfort. That's causing this discomfort. So sometimes you have to go deeper than just the need for comfort and say, okay, what's going on? Well, perhaps John is, he's living an unbalanced life, and so he's kind of binging between work and video games, right? And so maybe he needs to incorporate some things in his schedule that create better balance. Perhaps during the day, take some breaks, enjoy some nature, go for a walk, practice some, just good communications with friends and fellowship, right? Perhaps that could be a way of relieving stress. So he's not building up, and then he has to go, relieve the stress and playing too many video games. Okay, so there's deeper issues too. So that might be part of it. There might be an escapism going on here, where he's escaping from dealing with some troubles. And so he's, just goes and kind of escapes from that by finding this outlet, right? So perhaps there's something he has to address, something that's causing stress as well, besides just the work he has. Maybe there's a troubled relationship, an important relationship with a sibling or a friend that he has to resolve or somehow move on, and that's causing the stress, right? So these are the two problems when you that can happen when you're trying to meet a need for comfort, right? You can, in trying to satisfy that need for comfort, you can be neglecting deeper issues that need to be resolved. But also you can be sacrificing other needs or other important things, where you're pursuing comfort in a way that sacrifices or is at the expense of some other things. So example here, you're spending so much time playing video games that you don't have time to cultivate and maintain good friendships, right? So there's another important thing in life, indeed an important need. And the way you're pursuing this one need for comfort is you're doing it at the expense of having time to meet those other things, to do those other things that are good and important as well, right? So then you discern, this person, John, has to discern what is the right way to meet the authentic need of relaxation for comfort, but in a better way, really a more wholesome way, right? Perhaps not video games, perhaps do something else that's not to be so addictive. That'll allow you to relax, go for a walk, play some just solitaire, play a game, but play a game that's not going to draw you in so much and take so much of your time. Right, so there's ways of doing that, and that's what you want to do. And then when you do that, you order it towards God, because remember, when we seek something in an excessive way, in the wrong way, this counterfeit way, it's often going to be an attachment that's going to keep you from really keeping on your journey towards God. So when you find the right way, or a better way of dealing with the need, the authentic need of meeting that, you can then better order it to God, right? Because it's no longer an attachment that's holding you back. And that most important endeavor we have in life to enjoy God, to attain God. All right, so again, identify the underlying need, discern the right way to meet this need, and order this to the attainment of God. Those three things. But we start with the problem behavior first, right? Too much time playing video games or whatever it might be. All right, we can go through all this and think about it in other ways as well, and other examples. So for example, there's 4 classic ways in which people have pursued happiness, fulfillment in the wrong way. And they are pleasure, possessions, pleasure, power, possessions, and prestige. I use P words to remember them. But pleasure, power, possessions or wealth, prestige, honors, people, flattery, awards, all that kind of stuff. Okay, people can seek all those things in excessive ways. It's not that seeking any of that is necessarily wrong. You can do it in certain cases that are right. are fine. Having some pleasure, having some power or control of your life, all that are fine. But you can seek it in this excessive way. So you can think about that, examine yourself, and think about their behaviors that I'm going about in those areas that are wrong, they're counterfeits. Then do this practice. Identify what's the underlying need you're trying to meet, discern the right way to meet that need, and order it to God. Let me speak about that fourth one, prestige, right? Seeking honors, because this, often behind this one, there is a very, very important need that influences us, and I want to say some things about in this video, and we'll close with that. Okay, so with prestige, what's the counterfeit way of acting, and perhaps even a false instinct going on here, that you automatically do this, or try to meet your a desire, you're trying to find prestige, right? So here you're trying to seek honors, status, praise in the wrong way, right? So here's an example. You lie about yourself to impress others. Okay, it might be a little thing, might be a big thing. But sometimes people find themselves and they're not even sure why. Why am I keep telling these little lies about myself to make myself look better before others? Okay, it's wrong, right? But now do that exercise. What's the underlying need I'm trying to meet? Then you can start thinking about what's the right way to meet that need, and then order that to God. Another example: putting other people down in order to look better by comparison. Right? You want people to think well of you. So you put people down and kind of look better, right? It's bad. We know it's wrong, but sometimes we do it, right? In little gossipy ways. I know, throw a little criticism out here and there that's really not necessary. It's called, when it's not necessary or constructive, it's called detraction, the sin of detraction. Also, what we can do here is we try to look good in a superficial way, by appearances, right? So we pay too much attention to being beautiful or to having nice clothes, things that speak of status and all those kind of things, right? It's not that good hygiene, looking good, taking care of yourself, and wearing nice clothes can all be fine and good, but we can do it in an excessive way. Too much emphasis on that. Okay, so again, go through those steps. What is the underlying need that's trying to be met? Discern the right way to meet that need and order it to God. All right, so what is the underlying need here? I think this important one I mentioned before, alluded to before. It's the need to think well of oneself. Very, very important. The need to think well of oneself. And you can speak of this in terms of self-esteem, positive self-image, right? Sometimes when those terms are used, it is used in a very superficial, psychobabble way. Not always, right? I'm not saying it always is, but sometimes it is. So I don't mean it in that, but it is a real authentic need. If you don't think well of yourself, it's kind of torturous, right? It's really difficult, right? If you've experienced that in one way or another, you lack self-esteem, you're insecure, and all this kind of things, right? It's not a nice way to be. So this is something we need for our genuine fulfillment, right? To think well of oneself. Very important. And if you don't tend to this need, it's going to influence you. You might try to meet that need in a lot of bad ways. All right, so identify that need, right? And then step two, what are the right way? What are some right ways of meeting this authentic need, right? So here, let me give you some examples. One is to form good friendships and have good relationships, because in those relationships, when you're in a good relationship, the other people appreciate who you are. They see your genuine worth. It's not that they flatter you or say, yeah, it's okay when you do something wrong. No, but they see your genuine worth. They appreciate it, right? And so when you have friendships like that, that helps you, because here's an important thing to remember in this regard. How other people think of us influences how we think of ourselves. How other people think of us influences how we think about ourselves. We might say, I don't want it to be that way, but it just does. It's very hard to avoid that. So if we have good friendships, good relationships, and they think well of us, it helps us to see the value that we have, because we do have value. Okay, and this is why this irony, this weird thing, how we lie about ourselves to others. So we want them to think well of us, so we can think well of ourselves. But we're lying. We know we're lying. This is not true, but still we kind of like to go along with what other people are thinking of us. So it's a very weird way of thinking well of yourself, but we do it anyway. All right, so that's one way. And a second way is to reflect on your worth, your inherent natural worth and value as a human being. Right? Human beings are amazing things. Right? God has made us this way. So it's not like we're puffing ourselves up, we made ourselves so wonderful. No, even if we're horrible sinners, still we have this inherent worth as human beings. God has made us in his image. And we're made for eternity. We have this ability to think and reflect and to ponder, and we're so creative and we do these wonderful things, right? But all that's sign of this inherent worth that we have. Right? So think about that. You have this inherent worth that can't be taken away. Even if you sin, even do horrible things, you still have this amazing inherent value as a human being. You are amazing. You are wonderfully made, as the scriptures say, right? And that's God's great work. So think about that. Realize, right? And here's something that's going to help in this regard too. Think about, that the commandment, the second greatest commandment Christ gives us is to love your neighbor as yourself. So there's this relation between loving your neighbor and loving yourself. I would say it's kind of reciprocal, kind of works in tandem, back and forth. So you can't love yourself if you don't think well of yourself, right? That's another reason why this is an authentic need. We should love ourselves. So we need to think well of ourselves to do that, right? But if you practice ability to see the inherent value in other people and to love them for that, even if they're horrible people, right? But you can see that, then it's going to help you then in turn realize you have this amazing inherent worth. So do it towards other people to help it do it towards yourself as well. But in general, reflect on this, right? Realize you have this amazing worth, right? So important. All right, and then the third thing is this: reflect on and realize what Revelation tells us. That is what we learn through faith, that God looks on us and he loves us, right? We're told this. So God sees the amazing value. Even while we're sinners, he sees this amazing value we have, and he loves us, right? There's that line in the gospel story of the rich young man where Jesus is said to look at the young man and loves him, right? So God looks at you, he looks at me, and he loves, right? He's delighted in what he sees, what he's made. We are wonderfully made. Okay, so Revelation shows us this as well. And then all the more because God sends his only son to die for us. That's how much he values us. All right, so we have this value. God is not deceived. He can't be deceived, right? So he values us. That means we have value. All right, so that's another way in which the authentic way to meet this need. Okay, and then order that towards God, because if we are so valuable, we are meant indeed for God. And so we want to all the more pursue our, continue this journey of pursuing the full attainment of God and therefore the enjoyment of God. All right, so those steps, when you're doing something in a bad way, in a counterfeit way, perhaps developed a false instinct to seek things wrongly, identify what the underlying need is that you're trying to meet, then discern what's the right way to meet that need, and then order that to God. Okay, so I hope this helps. I think it's very practical, and I hope you can apply it to your life. We should wrap up these classes. I'm going to try to wrap it up in one more video, one more class. So God bless you. Please pray for us here at St. Procopius Abbey.